Today, we're going to tackle a pretty big topic, looking at all the crises happening in the world, but through a totally different lens, a spiritual one. Let's unpack this framework and see if it offers a new way to understand the chaos we all see and feel every day.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? You turn on the news, you scroll through your feed, and it can feel like just one random chaotic event after another. But what if it's not random? What if there's a deeper pattern happening just beneath the surface? That's the core idea we're going to explore together.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what this different point of view actually is. Then we'll dig into why crises happen in the first place and the opportunity that might be hiding inside all that chaos. We'll zoom out to look at the idea of a soul's long journey. And then we'll bring it all home to see how this can empower each of us to shape our own reality. Sound good? Let's dive in.
All right, first up, a different point of view. Before we go any further, we have to ask a really basic question. What does the source even mean by the word spiritual?
Well, this perspective isn't about any specific religion or dogma. Instead, it starts with one huge foundational idea that at your core, you are a spirit. And if that's the starting point, it means that any real analysis of what's happening in the world has to include the rules, the principles of how spirits actually operate. That's a very different place to start from, isn't it? And this framework builds on that core idea in some really fascinating ways. It suggests that spirit isn't locked into our physical world. It exists beyond what we can see, hear, or touch, maybe even beyond our concepts of space and time. And once you accept that, some big possibilities open up, like the idea that influencers can connect with us on a subconscious level, or that the real roots of our problems today might go way back, maybe even to former lifetimes. So with that framework in our back pocket, let's get to the million-dollar question. Why do crises happen? If we're looking at things from this spiritual viewpoint, where is all this chaos actually coming from? And this is where we see a huge split in how you can approach a problem. A purely intellectual analysis, well, it's limited. It can only see the stuff that's happening on the surface, the physical results. But the spiritual perspective, it blows the whole thing wide open. It starts looking for causes that are beyond our five senses and acknowledges that the spirit is playing a role in this whole drama.
So according to the source, crises are not random accidents. Not at all. They are basically a form of cause and effect. They pop up when our actions break certain sacred principles, and that creates an imbalance. And that imbalance is what we experience as chaos, conflict, and crisis in our lives.
And this brings us to a really central idea, captured perfectly in this quote. It says that each of us, each spirit, forges our own path. We are responsible for it, and the things we run into, we have to confront them so we can learn from the experience. The focus here is absolutely on personal responsibility and the chance to grow.
Now that focus on learning leads us to a really powerful shift in thinking, the idea that there's an opportunity hiding inside the chaos. This is where the whole framework reframes a crisis. It's not a punishment, it's something else entirely. You see, from this viewpoint, a crisis isn't just some awful thing you have to suffer through. It is fundamentally an opportunity. The idea is that baked into every single challenge is a lesson. It's a chance for the spirit to learn something, to correct an imbalance, and to achieve what the source calls spiritual regeneration. So how does this growth actually happen? Well, it's a cycle. It kicks off with an action that violates one of those core principles. That action creates an imbalance, which we then experience as a crisis. And it's by facing that crisis head-on that we create the space for learning and correction to happen, which, you guessed it, ultimately leads to spiritual growth. And that moment of confrontation, that's where we face a critical choice. It's a fork in the road. We can either see the lesson, make a change, and grow, or we can just ignore it and keep doing what we've been doing. But according to this perspective, ignoring the lesson doesn't make it vanish. It just means we'll face more, let's say drastic, experiences down the line, until we finally get the message. Okay, so that idea of facing lessons down the line kind of forces us to expand our timeline, doesn't it? That brings us perfectly to our fourth section, a soul's long journey. This part of the framework asks us to zoom way, way out. The idea here is that a spirit's journey isn't just one and done. It's not limited to a single human lifespan. It's much, much longer. And that means these lessons and crises, they don't just happen here on Earth. They can be experienced in this life, sure, but also in the life after death, or even when we return to Earth again. So this journey isn't seen as a straight line that just ends. It's more of a continuum, a cycle. It includes everything from past lifetimes to our current life right now, to what happens in the afterlife, and even the possibility of reincarnation. What that really means is that our present moment is just one stop on a much, much longer road of learning. And what's cool is that this expanded view can actually offer a new way to think about concepts that many of us grew up with. Big ideas like heaven, hell, and reincarnation that you find in sacred teachings all over the world. They can be seen not just as places, but as different stages or consequences within this epic journey of the spirit. Okay, so we've talked about some huge cosmic ideas, but what does this all mean for us, right here, right now, in our daily lives? That brings us to our final and maybe our most important section, forging our individual reality. This is all about taking this understanding and putting it into action. You see, this perspective leads to a fundamental shift in where we put our focus. It moves us away from feeling helpless or being paralyzed by worry about what the future holds. Instead, the focus becomes intensely personal and actually really empowering. It's all about the opportunity we have, in every single moment, to make good. So, what does that look like day to day? Well, it means focusing on a few key things, really understanding our personal responsibilities, getting a handle on the governing principles of life, becoming deeply aware that our actions have consequences, and through all of that, consciously and actively cultivating what the Source calls a responsible individual reality. And that leaves us with one final, very powerful question that this entire explainer has been building towards. The Source suggests that we are all forging our own path. And if that's true, it puts the power and the responsibility right back in our hands. The question stops being, what is the world doing to me, and becomes something much more direct. If you were forging your own path, what reality are you choosing to create right now?